Welcome to Dr. Roger and Friends, the bright side of longevity, hosted by three Ps in a podcast, Doc Roger, Teresa, and Danielle. Thanks for joining us for coffee and conversation.
Well, welcome, everybody. This is a special edition of the bright side of longevity. Very special, I think. Well, they're all special, right, Danielle? But Danielle and I are alone today. Teresa is off, but we're going to spotlight Danielle today. I have a new nickname for Danielle. I call her COVID Bloom because where everyone else was maybe, feeling sorry for themselves and beating themselves up and complaining about what they couldn't do, she found out what she could do and had been doing, but did it at a much higher rate. Anyway, today we're going to spotlight Danielle's remarkable trilogy, The Data Collectors. A trilogy, that's right. That's 3 books, 3 novels, in case you didn't know what trilogy meant. And yes, in this time, she has turned all that around. I guess you had it in your head before COVID, right? You had started, I know, maybe you were almost finished with the first one, but 2 and 3 just went boom, right? No?
I tell people the first book was 5.5 years in the making, the second one, 6 months, the third one around 4 months, but they were all published and written for the most part within about a year.
In print and
audio. Ebook and audiobook.
Wow.
The audio is so much fun playing with the character voices.
So you didn't waste your time, did you, Danielle? Well, let me just a little more of an intro. Danielle, you got to know her in this podcast, but she is a remarkable woman. She is disciplined. She is committed. She is dedicated to certain themes that I think our society need more than ever. I know she and her husband, John, very well, and have been in their home, and their lives reflect her work, her professionalism, and she is really a joy to be with. And she is so eclectic. I mean, it isn't just about bright side of longevity or healthy longevity. It's about the world and what's facing us in the world. It's about the humanism. It is about even you have other specific credentials. Didn't you get something with the Florida wildlife?
I am a Florida master naturalist.
And we just said how you just got nationally certified as a
nationally board certified health and wellness coach.
And you're also a mindfulness instructor, yeah. Right?
Yes.
And a partridge in a pear tree, right?
Exactly.
So all these things have initials that you put after your name. They must be the longest set of initials.
I don't. I leave the initials off usually, but I find it gets confusing because I spend more time when I see someone's name with initials trying to look up to see what they all mean, because a lot of times some are so specialized. So I usually just go by Danielle.
I would think it should be AVSP, a very special person.
Thank you, Roger. You're going to make me cry.
Well, I know that happens easy, too, because you're very sensitive, because you care about things. Well, let's focus on this remarkable trilogy. It is something that I remember you talking to me about, when we've been working together now for 10 years, and that it was sort of like a little seed that you had in your head. And I said, well, Danielle, I've been writing a novel too, but it's been 8 years and it isn't finished, and I haven't looked at it in 5 years and whatever. But so the discipline here and the commitment is just remarkable. So The Data Collectors. All right. So it's 3 books. Each has their own title. I know. Right. And so you'll fill us in. So tell us, what is it about?
Okay. In the nutshell, it's about intergalactic real estate. So what does that mean? So the data collectors are data collectors. There's a huge ongoing argument about whether it's data or data. So I tend to flip back and forth. But the data collectors live on an Earth-like planet, and they're here trying to collect information about us, about our wildlife, flora, fauna, our environment, our eating habits, everything to help us figure out why the human race is dying off. Because according to the premise of the book, we once occupied many planets on many solar systems, and now we seem to be reduced to Earth, and Earth is not doing so well. So they want to help us. However, there are also special interest groups from neighboring sections, I call them, or planets, that would rather see us die off sooner rather than later, because, you know, we have some natural resources that they might want. So they might want to occupy Earth. So it's kind of it's been described as an intergalactic space opera with a little romance.
Space opera. I love that. Well, I have gotten through 2. I haven't gotten through the 3rd one yet, and I am just intrigued. Normally, as a physician and someone who had to read so much for work, I haven't read even a lot of fiction, actually, but sci-fi for sure not. And I think this is more than sci-fi. If you'd have to ask me, I think it's extremely allegorical, and it is writing about things. Who knows? We have yet to discover, but it could very well be out there, and it is extremely allegorical. Now, can I zero in for a minute? You and I have been working with Teresa and the whole Masterpiece group on about healthy longevity, about ageism, about lifestyle and its importance. So there's some overlapping themes, are there not, between the data collectors and Masterpiece?
Absolutely. So I actually started working with Masterpiece in 2010. So 2022 in March, it's going to be 12 years. But you and I started working together when Live Long, Die Short came out in December of 2013. And I think it's our working together that really helped me hone in and made me much more aware of the themes surrounding ageism and stereotypes about people who age, and even stereotypes about gender roles and where we fit in society. So I was really mindful of those things as I was writing the trilogy.
Your characters are so different than what we on this planet portray, how we portray older adults and their role and in society, and how we value them. And so your characters are much different.
Yeah, I very purposefully wanted the characters to not all be in their 20s or 30s. So they range anywhere from teenagers up through hundreds. Their lifespans on certain planets are just a lot longer. And the reason being, and I can give you an example, you know, I got tired of reading books that showed older people as frail and cranky and crotchety. There was one book that Amazon recommended that I would like, so I read it. It was a romantic comedy, and it's a woman in her early 30s, but they're making this joke. She goes on a cruise and she ended a relationship, and so she ends up sitting at a table with a man who's 50 years old. And the recurring joke is, oh, well, if she doesn't find someone soon, she's going to end up with this old man. So my first thought was, maybe Amazon did not know their audience very well if they suggested it to me, or what our perceptions were of older people. And second, at 49 years old, 50 didn't strike me as terribly old for a 30-something-year-old.
No, next year you can be a member of AARP. That used to be a badge of oldness, but it is not anymore.
So I really wanted in the data collectors for the characters to be doing interesting stuff in their 40s, in their 70s, in their 80s, and really try to be mindful of that. And also, even in the classroom, when they're at TARA, the Terrestrial Academy of Research and Awareness, they don't just have teenagers, they have 50, 60 and plus coming back for education and starting new careers. And that was very purposeful. And I can thank Masterpiece for its years of influence that got me thinking about that.
There are many things in this book that I'd like to see brought to reality here on this planet in order to save not only our planet, but to save our society and work towards a healthy longevity. Well, you and I just finished, we do lots of content. We write lots of content for Masterpiece. We have huge amount that you and I have had such a pleasure writing, and the whole team writes. And we just finished a program, an intergenerational program that was focused on women and their evolving role in society. I see some of that in this story in the Data Collectors Trilogy.
I tried to, it is heavily focused on women's roles because I happen to be a woman, but I did try to pay attention to the men as well. And what I tried to do is in many of the roles, if it were typically a young male filling the role, I would fill it with an older woman. Or so, for example, Commander Royce is very old, and yet she's a soldier. And she's little, and nobody questions her authority. You have Dr. Willa is a female, well-respected doctor. You have Renanette, who's the director of the Makerspace, which is women in technology you don't hear as much about, and she's the director. I made Palomar and Mallory. They own a costume shop. They're men. I had a male nurse, and I didn't do it in every single case. What I was seeking to do was normalize the fact that we don't have to fit into those stereotypes. Women are the teachers and the nurses. Men are the doctors and the scientists, that there is much overlap, and there should be.
There absolutely should be. And then next year, you and I plan to do the same with the topic, with the focus on men, namely men through the ages and how they're perceived in the media and their roles. And so we'll be doing that one. And I plan to have a big role in that sense. I'm one of them.
We want to continue to provide information that is valuable and reliable to our listeners. We welcome your comments and suggestions for topics that are important to you. Please see the description of this episode to contact the Brightside team.
Your characterization, it is incredible. It is the depth of your characterization, your character portrayal, and the number of characters. I don't know. You must have a big board somewhere. You can't keep this all straight in your head, right?
Well, if you look at the print version of the book, there actually is a list of the characters in each one. And if I'm being honest, by the time I got to book 3 and I started describing the eye color of a character, sometimes I had to go reference it myself. Like, did I give them gray eyes or blue eyes?
Yeah. And with the audiobook, what was that accent they spoke with? Because you did the females for the audio.
So I purposefully did not want... I wanted, when you listen to the audio, to be able to tell the distinct character voices. So I can hear them in my head when I'm typing, but they didn't translate when I started working on audio. So I had the opportunity to co-narrate with Graham Mack, who's a producer and audiobook narrator and broadcaster. So he did all the male voices, and he has a lot more experience doing those different character voices. So for me, I added accents, but I didn't want them to necessarily be distinctly French or German or, Caribbean. I gave elements of it just to identify the different characters, because they're aliens. They can be from anywhere. So I did download some accent help for actors and tried to go through a few courses just so that I would work on how I'd position my mouth, how I'd position where I was coming from in the throat. Is it high in the mouth or deep in the chest? And so I had a lot of fun with them. They were difficult, but
I've written fiction with some characters, and your identification with the characters must have been so enriched by that.
They have a mind of their own. In fact, in one point in our first interview that Graham had interviewed me, and he said, Ivan started pronouncing things wrong. He said, it wasn't me. The character got it wrong, because you get so immersed in the characters that the voice changes. There were some characters that came out without me, wanting them to. Like, I have Kiki, and he kind of talks like this the whole time. And I find myself making these movements as I'm talking about her, or there was Amy, who we hate. You'll discover her in the 3rd book.
It's Amy.
I opened my mouth and she came out and she sounded like this. And I was like, all right, that's her voice. So some of them just happened on their own. Some were very purposeful. But yes, it was interesting to get into those roles. The closest I've ever gotten to method acting, I guess. So when we're talking about strong female characters, Moksha comes to mind. Now she's a peace-loving assassin, which doesn't seem to go hand in hand.